Hi, fourth graders, it's Miss Leon. We're here continuing to learn how to read different parts of nonfiction texts. Today, what we're going to do is we are going to focus on reading nonfiction texts better by looking at figuring out the meaning of new unknown words. So unknown words are like words that when you're reading and you come to it and you don't know what they are and you don't know what they mean. So there are some strategies that we could use to help us figure out the meaning of unknown words. For example, we can look at the root words, and we can talk more about that in a minute. We could look at the suffixes or the prefixes that goes along with what root words are, or we could look around. When you're reading and you see an unknown word, you can look around and you can see, like, what are you picturing as you're reading? What is this making you think of? What's happening? Is what you're reading, is it a positive thing or is it a negative thing? What type of word is it? Is it an object? Is it an action? Is it describing something? When you're looking up and around as you're reading, it can maybe help give you clues as to what that word might mean. I always love to give this example. I feel like this is a perfect example. When I was a kid and I would be in the back seat of the car with my brother, and me and my brother would start to argue and fight in the back seat. And my mom would yell at us, cease and desist, cease and desist. And you're thinking, like, what does that mean? Cease and desist. Well, what I can do is if I was reading this and I was reading that story about there's two kids in a car and they're fighting in the back seat, and then their mother yells at them to cease and desist, you're going to be thinking about, like, what are you picturing in your head? What's happening? Is it a positive thing that's going on, or is it a negative thing? Is it an action? Is it describing? What is it? And I'm thinking, if you were in the back seat arguing with your sibling, your brother, your sister, your cousin, whoever, another kid, and then the adult yelled cease and desist, what do you think that probably means? If you're thinking that they're telling you to stop and stop right now, you guessed 100% correct. And what you did is you just pictured it in your head. What could this mean? And it was probably going to mean to stop. And that would be an example of how you're figuring out the meaning of unknown words. So let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper into this learning. When learning the meaning of new unknown words, you can use some other strategies such as context clues, like thinking about things in terms of what is happening to help you determine those unknown words. One example is an explanation. What is an explanation? Well, when you're reading, sometimes the author explains what that word means. An explanation is the act or the process of making something clear. So they'll give you the unknown word, but then they'll follow that up with an explanation of what that word could mean. Another thing an author can do is give you a synonym. Well, what's a synonym? Well, I make a joke and I'm like, what is a synonym? But what is a synonym? They are words that have almost the same exact meaning. So they could give you this new word, but then they would also say the word that could mean the same right next to it. They could say it's cold or chilly and then be describing that cold and chilly mean about the same thing, just like sad and unhappy, big and large, happy and glad. Those are synonyms to each other that could help you understand what that word could mean, because they mean about the same thing. So that's another thing an author could do. They could give you an antonym, which would be the opposite of what that unknown or new word could mean. So, like, they could say, the sun is hot, however, the snow is cold. And then that would help you understand maybe, well, I didn't know what hot meant, but I know that the sun is not the same as snow, so maybe that could help me understand the meaning. And the last thing that we could think about is maybe an example. Sometimes the authors give you an example to help you understand what that new word could mean. And an example is a phrase or a sentence that shows how a word is used. For example, Carlos was so parched. Carlos was so parched after his game, he drank an extra large bottle of Gatorade. Well, I don't know what parched means, but it gave me the example that he drank an extra large bottle of Gatorade. So if he's so parched and he's drinking an extra large, parched must mean really thirsty. So let's go ahead and look at a few more examples before we dig in. Okay, so I'm going to look at this page right here, and I see that in this book, they were talking about pressure. And it says, we're looking at these unknown words that we don't know. And here's the word, life under pressure. Well, pressure, what does that mean? So in the book, it says, feel that here on Earth, the air presses against us with the force of about 15 pounds per square inch. So I'm reading what that says, and I'm wondering, like, what does pressure mean? And I'm thinking of like some other times I've heard the word pressure, like I've heard of peer pressure, I've heard of tire pressure. How do those things connect with what I'm reading here with pressure? I mean, let me think. Press. I see the root in there, press, like going like this. If I was pushing things against each other, forcing it. Okay, well, there it says, here on Earth, the air presses against us with the force. So I'm guessing that pressure, because I see press, means like a pushing together of sorts. So it continues to say, you really can't feel atmospheric pressure, but it does play a role in weather prediction. So atmospheric, that's another big word that I'm not sure of. So I'm wondering what atmospheric might mean. I see in the word atmospheric the word sphere. And I know a sphere is like a ball, like the earth is a sphere. Maybe when they say like atmospheric pressure, like the earth and like the pressure for the earth, so something like earth pressure, maybe that's what atmospheric pressure means. I don't know. What are you thinking? Would that make sense in our context? So your job when you are reading unknown words is trying to figure out the parts that you do know versus the parts that maybe you don't know. And as you're doing that, make sure that you use all these tools and skills to help you figure out what these new words might mean, looking at root words, the suffixes, the prefixes, going in your head and seeing what you picture, imagining what's happening. If you were there, is it a positive situation or a negative? Thinking about if the word is an object, an action, or if it's describing something, or maybe there's an explanation, or maybe there's an example, or maybe there is a synonym, or maybe there's an antonym. But any way you look at it, you have all these tools that you can use to help you determine the meaning of brand new words that you have not seen or heard before. I'm so excited to see what you come up with and all the new words that you're going to learn.